Who is the greatest golfer that ever lived? And I had played with most of the ones that people put on that list. And I'd always say, oh, greatest golfer that ever lived was Winford Kurbow. Who is Winford Kurbow? He probably never broke 80 in his life. But he loved the game. I mean, loved it. And he introduced me to golf. As a young man, I knew that I was an entrepreneur, that I was going to work for myself. And when I got out of Vietnam, come back, I went to work as a subcontractor on masonry. And I had a partner, and we were doing a lot of commercial buildings, doing this kind of thing. But the young lady that I was seeing was a member of Jonesboro First Baptist Church. So we started going there. And in that, I was always a loud mouth and outgoing. So as soon as we got involved with the church, they wanted me to teach Sunday school, young people. So I said, sure. So we did. But in that class was Dan and Bubba Cathy, Truett Cathy's son. I didn't know, it didn't matter to me. You know, I saw Truett at the church, but he was just somebody else there. And because nobody had even ever heard of Chick-fil-A. So it wasn't like it would be now if it was there. But anyway, one Sunday afternoon, Truett Cathy approached me and said, my children like you. And maybe he said love, I don't know. But anyway, I'm in the restaurant business, and we are expanding. And I need quality people to do owner-operators of my store. Okay. He said, I'd like for you to come and look at what we do. Okay. And that's about all it wound up being. But anyway, he invited me down to Hateville to their corporate offices, and we sat in there the day I went, and we talked. And then he said to me, won't you go out and look at how a Chick-fil-A operates, then you'll know. So, okay. And I was building a school in DeKalb County out at Snapfinger. That's where it's working right now. And so he wanted me to go to South DeKalb Mall to see an existing store and how it operated. Well, I said, okay, we'll look at that. The first day it's raining or weather's bad or whatever, I'll go look. He said, all right. And he said, the owner-operator out there is named Winford Kurbow. And so when you get there, just introduce yourself, and I'm going to call him and tell him you're going to be coming. So, okay, that was all settled. So I went to work, and I don't know, it was a few days later, I could see that I could, because South DeKalb Mall wasn't that far away from where I was at out on Snapfinger. So I said, I'll go down there. So I go down to South DeKalb Mall. Now, this is probably 1970. Might have been 71 or 70. Malls were busy. They were busy. And you go in them, there's a hum. So I went into the South DeKalb Mall, and there wasn't many malls in Atlanta then. But as I walked into the mall, there was a hum, a buzz in it. And South DeKalb was kind of like a T. You go this way, and another wing went this way. So when I walked in, I walked right into the middle of that area. And back then, now hear me, there was no food courts, none of that kind of stuff. Every store was just lined haphazardly throughout the mall. Restaurants weren't all in one place. It was different. But when I walked into the center of that mall, I looked across that corridor there, and there was that little old building over on the side over there. It was had all the Chick-fil-A colors and stuff with it, and I started walking towards that store. And I got about halfway there and stopped dead in my tracks, because I really looked up and seen what was in that store. And there was people, there was 2 registers, and there was 2 people out front besides them. But every one of them had on a little red bow tie and a paper hat that said Chick-fil-A on the side of it. And I stood there for at least a minute arguing with myself. And this is an important point to where we're going with everything in our minds, what a difference a day makes. Because I've thought about this day a lot. And had I not made some decisions I made, things would have been totally different. In the same way in your life. If the decisions you make, and a lot of times you don't know it when it's happening, but here it comes. But I stood there and I said, ain't no way in the world this airborne combat veteran is going to put on one of them paper hats and that little red bow tie. It ain't happening. And that was my thought. But then right behind that, I told Truett I'd go see what this is all about. And so over to the side of the little dining there, and it wasn't much of a dining area, it's a little bitty. There's a door that you could tell that's where the employees went in. So I went over and opened that door. And when I opened it, I didn't know it, but there stood the reason that really I'm doing the book. And his name was Winford Kurbow. Didn't know that when I opened the door, but as soon as I opened it, he looked at me and said, you got to be George. Truett told me you was coming. Yes, sir. Come on in. And I walked in, and he was standing there with an apron, had it folded 3 ways, tied, and he was standing at that stainless table battering chicken. Now, in Chick-fil-A battering chicken, that chicken goes in a milk wash and goes in the batter, goes on a tray, goes out front, and goes in a henny penny and cooks. And there's a system with that. But when I looked at it for the first time, I'd never seen anybody battering chicken, or none of it, but it was just and Kurbow at the time was probably mid to late 50s. And he might have been a little older than that. But anyway, that was where he was at. That was a lot of years ago. But I come in there, and we just, our hellos. How are you? What you doing? That's fine. And he said, walk around behind me and stand here in this door. So I went around where he was talking about, and I got out to where I could see the mall and the hustle and bustle going on out there. And Kurbow had the best personality. He was just an awesome man. But he had a way about him, and he was worked on the railroad for years in the dining part of that. So he would do food catering on trains. So, but he had to be personality to get that job. So I said, okay. He said, just listen. And so I was attentive. And so I stood there probably 2 or 3 minutes, and it was constant. And people on them registers were just food going out like crazy. So I backed up one step, and he said, what'd you see? And I said, well, it's busy. There's a lot of people out there doing this, and that's got to be a good product. There's too many people wanting it. And he said, now I want you to listen. Every time that drawer opens on one of them registers, a bell rings, ding, listen to the bell. And I'm standing back here battering chicken, that's Kurbow. And he said, just smiling. Because every time that bell rings, I make a dime. And he literally made a game out of it. He was listening to the bells. But it was awesome. And I said, well, it takes a lot of bells to make money at a dime. He said, yeah, I know. Come back around here. So I walked back on the other side of him and had them green shelves above him was in most restaurants then, where you'd stack your stuff and your inventory and all that. But anyway, on the corner over here was a stack of papers. And Kurbow reached up, and on the corner of that stack, one of them was sticking out. And he reached and got it, but when he got it, he had to kind of pull on it to get it to where it was going. I'll never forget it. The batter on his arm trickled down onto the table down here. And he took that piece of paper and laid it in front of me. And he said, that's my last month's P&L. And I looked at it close. I said, last month's? He said, yeah. That bell sounded better, isn't it? That's the way he put it. I said, yeah. I said, but in my mind, not to him, that bow tie don't look no better, that hat don't look no better, but it is looking better when you're looking at these figures. So we talked for a while, and I figured that if I did just right, I could convince somebody to change that tie and hat. And we did right away. But anyway, I agreed, I'm going to do this. So we did, and we started with Chick-fil-A. And the storyline of that, always in my mind, till I really got down to the bottom line of what a difference a day makes. Now, I'm going to tell you the front side of that difference a day makes with Chick-fil-A, because that was the start of it. And we went in there and this is great, da-da-da. But I looked at it, and I guess I looked with different eyes, and God's always blessed me with being able to analyze something and see if I can improve it or think better of it. And I always was that way, just loved doing that. So I went to Kurbow's store to train to operate my store at Perimeter Mall. So now I watched them two registers and their SOP inside Chick-fil-A, and you right away, you're wasting a lot of money because you're way too slow with what you're doing. You can speed this up. And so when it time for me to go do my store, first person I hired was my mother to run my kitchen, because their standard operational procedure was 3 or 4 people on the front, one on each register, and on the back bar where all the food's been prepared, and then 2 people back there, and here we go. And then they had 1 or 2 people in the kitchen. That was their total staff. And so when I went over to Perimeter, and we had 2 registers, a little bitty place way in the back end of Perimeter Mall down by Penny's, actually next door to Penny's. But it was just a little shotgun. On front was just a little bit of space, and then all the kitchen was down the side, and we had a seating area down that side. No food court, no nothing. But so I went out there, and I knew that it takes people to do what needs to be done to get things moving. So I started hiring people. And when it come time to get ready to open, I had 12 employees in that building. Now, Truett came out there with Jeanette and some of the other relatives, because like they do grand openings. And it was grand opening day. But when he walked in, you couldn't hardly walk for my employees. But when we practiced on the front, nobody moved. You got 2 registers. You got a sidekick with each register doing drinks. you've got a bagger that was supplying product off the bar to wherever it needed to go, and then 3 people on the back, one of them doing chicken, one of them doing building the sandwiches, another one doing fries, and they didn't move. That's your job. And Truett had a habit, I used to laugh at him, but when he would get aggravated or something, and I learned that in a hurry, or when he was questioning something, he'd pop his nose. And there's something about to come out of that. So, but he was just livid. Your labor cost is going to be so high. I said, wait till the end of the day, and then we'll talk about it. So he agreed to that because he knew he was right. But the most any Chick-fil-A had ever done in a day was a little over $1,700. So we start this day, and it's day one. Nobody knew anything in Perimeter Mall, or very few people ever even heard of Chick-fil-A. But so we start, and I've got the drinks and all that stuff, and we're going. So at the end of the day, our register said we had done $2,800 day one. $1,000 better than any day they'd ever done. But there was $900 of the money missing. Wasn't there? And I'll never forget this. Troy said, I knew we couldn't be doing that much. That's what he said to me. I said, well, it's here somewhere. We'll find it. And I just watched it. But anyway, a few minutes later, because we're now closed and cleaning up, Truett reached under the pie case on the front and pulled a Chick-fil-A bag out of there, had $1,000 in it that he put in there. Took it out of the register because the registers were running over. Put it in there. So that was a record breaker. And naturally, it wasn't but a few days till everybody was hiring more people. Then Cumberland Mall opened right behind that, and it was a big success. But it was all about time. And I, to this day, this many years later, it just tickles me to death to go by Chick-fil-A and watch how fast everything moves. I think they're the fastest in the industry. And way back in the day, old Fat Boy here helped make that happen, and that was cool. But the Chick-fil-A story was, we started operating that, and old George wasn't long till I was bored with it, because Truett wouldn't let you have but one store. And not only that, you couldn't do anything outside any other business that you would do. Right here, this is where it's at. And it was a good thing. I mean, it made a lot of money, and it was easy. Any business has got complications, but comparatively it's easy. Product in, fix it, product out. And but I'd only been there 2 or 3 months, and I hired my mom and dad. Dad and I would stand on that register, because Perimeter Mall at the time was in the middle of nowhere, but had offices scattered around, but it wasn't a shopping mega. But every day, and I don't know if it was I think it was from 12 to 1, we averaged 1,000 customers an hour. Just that lunch break that everybody come, because they'd come to Chick-fil-A, and that line could be past the next store down the mall, and it wasn't just a minute till that line was gone. Because my dad and I would stand on them registers and would do $1,100 in that hour. Now, Chick-fil-A fries and a Coke was 99 cents. So how many people were we waiting on? 1,000. I mean, moving, and everybody moving. But it was fun. We made it fun. So anyway, Truett come and said, our Greenbrier store, the lady out there that's got is going to Florida. and we're going to need an operator out there, and I'm wondering if your mom and dad would like that. I said, I can answer for them. Yeah, they would. So we gave that store to Mom, and so they went right over there and operated that till my dad passed while they were operating, and Mom retired from there. But in that period of time that she was there, they took in millions of dollars, and Mom and Dad was making $100,000 a year back then, but it was just awesome. And so as time goes on, all of that evolves, and like I said, I moved on to other restaurants and 42 different businesses. But that day, standing in that mall is what I want to talk about right now. But standing out in that mall, and until this morning, I never really understood what the purpose in that was right there. Because when I looked at them little red bow ties and that hat, I ain't doing that. Now, had I walked out of that mall right then and just called Troy and said, ain't for me, a lot of things would have changed. My mom and dad's rest of their career, and as soon as Mom and Dad got their store, the first person they hired was my older brother who was just finishing college. So he gets a Chick-fil-A, and for 40 years, he was a Chick-fil-A operator. So standing in the middle of that mall, making a decision, yeah, I'm going in and see about this, or no, I'm not. Now, in my life and in your life, there's a lot of days standing out somewhere that we're deciding, are we going to do this or not? And so for years, I always thought about, well, you made the right decision because where you went, your mom and dad did this and Frank did that, and it was all great. But that wasn't the story. The real story is in the end of this chapter and the next chapter and in the end of the book. Because really, the difference that day made, that day, was when I opened that back door of that employee side, and there stood Winford Kurbow. Now, nothing changed in that as far as what we was doing with Chick-fil-A. But during training, Kurbow looked at me, and I just loved him. He said, let's go play golf. I said, you're crazy. I don't play golf. That's sissy. Oh, yeah? Come try it. I ain't got any clubs. I do. We use mine. So we went down to Browns Mill Golf Course there in College Park. And I'd never been on a golf course. But we go in there and we get out on the tee box and start hitting balls. But by the third hole, I was addicted. 3 holes. I knew I was going to play this game. And that little old golf course, it's called Browns Mill. I was down there just 3 or 4 months ago, just stopped and drove through it just for memory's sake. But that golf course, and Kurbow would go with me as often as he could. We'd go play. Of course, we started playing all over everywhere. But I got my first everything on that golf course. I got my first triple, quadruple bogey, but I got my first bogey, my first par, my first birdie, my first eagle, and my first double eagle on that golf course. And that'll get you addicted. And great memories. So all the things we went through with Chick-fil-A was awesome. It was good. But the real difference that day made was meeting Winford Kurbow. And he introduced me to the game that made the most difference of anything outside God that I ever did. And that was golf. Because from that day, we wound up a few years later with KISS Golf and over $100 million in sales. It was just awesome. So, and years ago, I was writing about all the golf courses I'd played on. And, oh my goodness. And then what's your favorite golf course? And I've had, I don't know, because I had 16,000 students when we started the golf business. Not when we started, but while I was processing. And so often, one of those students or somebody would ask me, where's your favorite course? Where'd you play? Well, I played so many golf courses. I mean, I think it was 13 countries I played golf in. But my favorite course was Whistling Straits in Kohler, Wisconsin. Can't answer all the whys with that, but that's where it was. But I'm talking about every major, and then all the PGA professional tour players that I got to play golf with was phenomenal. I mean, phenomenal. And I did a film that when we were doing sales, because we did custom clubs, and we wouldn't sell clubs without training. So we had PGA pros giving lessons to every student. And when they learned, and I would always say this to mothers, you want to play golf? Well, I don't know how to. Well, here's the deal. Right now you got children, right? Yes. Some of them play baseball, whatever. And you go watch them, don't you? Sit in the bleachers with your neighbors, talking about stuff. Let me tell you about golf. You take that child and you set them in a golf cart beside you and you go play golf. By the third hole, you know who they're in love with this week. What subject is giving them trouble? But what's it doing to your heart? To take that child and do something that you're both enjoying in the most beautiful places on earth. It's called golf. Now, who is Winford Kurbow? He introduced me to golf, which filled my life. Now, I'm a nobody from nowhere, but I hope that in my life somebody can ask, well, who's George McGill? He's a nobody from nowhere, but he introduced me to Jesus. Therefore, he's the greatest something that ever lived. And whatever you fill that blank in. Now, I want you to think about, because, again, Winford Kurbow wasn't even that talented, but he had a ball playing. And we sit around right now seeing people and talking to them, but don't ever mention Jesus. When the simplicity of it is, talk about Jesus. Introduce whoever that is to absolute the best thing that'll ever happen in their life. Now, I want to introduce you to a method for you to do more than you've ever done in your life, but also have an absolute guaranteed seat in heaven. And it's as simple as be born again. And at some point, maybe somebody somewhere can say, yeah, that old fat boy introduced me to Jesus. And Winford Kurbow, I know you're in heaven. But I don't know how that all happens right now. And it may not till I get there. But when I find you, I'm going to hug you and say thank you. You were life-changing and didn't even know it. And that's the beauty of being a Christian. It's life-changing, and you don't even have to know it because somebody's keeping a record. And let's make that record awesome, to be born again. If you don't know how, call us. Go online, something, text something. Because we'd love for you to come to the North Georgia mountains and meet with us and talk. It's just awesome. Take the time. It's worth it. I love you with all my heart.